The music echoed through the subway tunnel like a haunting whisper, stopping strangers in their tracks. But when a woman from her past recognized that voice, everything Maya thought she'd buried forever came rushing back. What happened next would expose a truth so shocking, it would rewrite her entire destiny. The morning rush hour chaos of Penn Station swallowed most sounds whole, but not hers. Maya Chen sat cross-legged on the cold concrete, her weathered guitar case open in front of her, collecting crumpled bills and loose change from passing commuters. Her fingers danced across the strings with a precision that seemed almost impossible for someone who looked like she hadn't slept indoors in weeks. Her voice soared above the rumble of approaching trains, pure and crystalline, carrying notes that made hardened New Yorkers pause mid-step. Some dropped coins without looking. Others lingered, mesmerized by the raw emotion pouring from this slight figure in torn jeans and a faded hoodie. But Maya kept her eyes closed, lost in the music that had become both her salvation and her prison. She played the same spot every day for 3 years now, Platform 7 near the Downtown Express, close enough to catch the attention of thousands, far enough from the main crowd to avoid too much scrutiny. The transit police knew her face, the vendors nodded their silent approval, and regular commuters had come to expect her haunting melodies as part of their daily routine. What they didn't know was that every song she played was worth more than most people made in a year. Original compositions that had once graced the stages of Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center, now offered freely to anyone willing to listen in the depths of the subway system. Maya finished her morning set and began packing up her guitar. The day's earnings sat in her case, maybe $40 in small bills and coins, enough for coffee, a sandwich, and another night at the youth hostel where she paid by the week. It wasn't much, but it was honest. It was hers. It was safe. But as she zipped up her guitar case, a shadow fell across her. Maya looked up to see a woman in an expensive black coat, designer handbag clutched tightly, staring down at her with eyes that held a mixture of shock and recognition. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "Are you Maya Chen?" Maya's blood turned to ice. She hadn't heard her real name spoken aloud in 3 years. Here, she was just Guitar Girl or the Asian chick with the voice. Anonymous, invisible, safe. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Maya said quietly, shouldering her guitar case and preparing to leave. The woman stepped closer. "You are Maya Chen, Maya Elizabeth Chen, daughter of Victor Chen. I'd recognize that voice anywhere." Maya froze. The mention of her father's name hit her like a physical blow, dragging her back to a world she'd fought desperately to escape. "I'm Dr. Sarah Hoffman," the woman continued. "I was your accompanist at Juilliard before everything happened." The subway platform suddenly felt like it was spinning. Maya gripped the strap of her guitar case tighter, her knuckles white. That was a long time ago. "Maya, what are you doing down here?" Dr. Hoffman's voice was gentle but urgent. "Do you have any idea how many people have been looking for you?" "Nobody's looking for me," Maya said firmly. "Maya Chen doesn't exist anymore." But even as she said it, she could see the disbelief in Dr. Hoffman's eyes. And somewhere deep inside, a part of her that had been carefully buried for 3 years began to stir. "Your father," Dr. Hoffman began, "is dead to me," Maya cut her off sharply, "just like I'm dead to him. Maya, he's been searching for you for 3 years, ever since you disappeared from the academy. He never stopped believing you'd come back." Maya's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Right, after he destroyed everything I worked for, after he made sure I could never show my face in classical music again." Dr. Hoffman's expression softened. "What exactly do you think happened, Maya?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Maya had carried the weight of that night for 3 years, the memory of her father's betrayal, the scholarship scandal, the accusations that had driven her from the only world she'd ever known. But something in Dr. Hoffman's tone suggested there was more to the story than Maya had ever known. "I think," Maya said slowly, "that you need to leave me alone." She turned and walked away, but Dr. Hoffman's voice followed her through the tunnel. "The truth isn't what you think it is, Maya, and your father isn't the villain in this story." Maya didn't stop walking, but those words echoed in her mind long after Dr. Hoffman's voice had faded into the subway noise. That night, Maya sat in her tiny hostel room, staring at her guitar. For 3 years, she'd told herself she was free from the pressure, the expectations, the suffocating world of classical music. But Dr. Hoffman's words had cracked something open inside her, and now doubts were seeping in like water through broken glass. She pulled out her phone and, for the first time in 3 years, typed her father's name into a search engine. What she found changed everything. The headlines told a story she'd never heard. Renowned conductor Victor Chen accused of scholarship fraud. Investigation clears Chen of all charges. Chen's daughter missing after false accusations surface. Maya's hands shook as she read article after article. The scholarship scandal that had destroyed her world, the accusations that had driven her from Juilliard, it had all been orchestrated by her father's former business partner, Marcus Webb. A man who'd been embezzling from the Music Foundation for years and needed a scapegoat when the board grew suspicious. Her father hadn't betrayed her. He'd been protecting her, taking the blame, accepting the professional exile to keep her name clear. And when the truth finally came out 6 months later, she was already gone, vanished into the anonymous crowds of New York City. The worst part, the articles showed her father at press conferences, pleading for information about his missing daughter, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow with grief and guilt. Maya Elizabeth Chen was an exceptional student and an even more exceptional person, he'd said in one interview. "If you're watching this, sweetheart, please come home. We can fix this. We can fix everything." Maya closed her laptop and stared at the wall. 3 years of anger, 3 years of believing she'd been abandoned, 3 years of running from a truth that had never existed. But the damage was done. Her scholarship was long gone. Her reputation in classical music was complicated at best. And her father, the man she'd loved and trusted and then hated with equal intensity, was now a stranger separated by years of silence and misunderstanding. She could go back, she could call him, apologize, try to rebuild what they'd lost. But the girl who'd once played Carnegie Hall was gone, replaced by someone harder, more cautious, someone who'd learned to survive in the shadows. The next morning, Maya returned to Platform 7, but everything felt different. Her music carried a new weight, a deeper sorrow that seemed to reach into the souls of everyone who heard it. The usual commuters lingered longer, some openly wiping away tears. She was in the middle of a particularly haunting piece when she noticed him. A man in his 50s, standing at the edge of the crowd, watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Well-dressed, confident, with the kind of sharp eyes that suggested he was used to evaluating talent. When she finished the song, he approached, pulling out a business card. "James Rodriguez," he said. "I'm a talent scout for Atlantic Records." Maya took the card reluctantly. "I'm not interested." "You haven't heard my offer yet," he said with a smile. "I've been listening to you play for the past week. You have something special, something the music industry desperately needs." "Which is?" "Authenticity, raw emotion. The kind of voice that can't be manufactured or auto-tuned or focus-grouped into existence." Maya shook her head. "I'm not a pop star. I'm not whatever you think you're looking for." "I'm not looking for a pop star," James said. "I'm looking for an artist, someone who can bridge the gap between classical training and modern sensibility, someone exactly like you. He handed her another card, this one with an address. There's a private showcase tomorrow night. Small venue, intimate crowd, industry professionals who appreciate real talent. One song, that's all I'm asking for. Maya stared at the card. Why me? There are thousands of musicians in this city. Because, James said, I've never heard anyone play like their life depends on it until I heard you. That's not something you can teach, that's something you earn. He left, and Maya was alone with her thoughts and a decision that could change everything. The showcase venue was smaller than she'd expected, an intimate club in Soho with maybe 50 people scattered across candlelit tables. Industry professionals, James had said, but they looked more like music lovers than corporate executives. Maya stood backstage, guitar in hand, fighting every instinct that told her to run. She'd agreed to one song, but even that felt like stepping back into a world that had once consumed her entirely. You ready? James appeared beside her, his expression encouraging but not pushy. I don't know why I'm here, Maya admitted. Because music isn't something you do, he said. It's something you are, and you can't run from who you are forever. The stage lights dimmed as she walked out, guitar in hand. The crowd quieted, waiting. Maya sat on the simple stool at center stage and closed her eyes. She didn't announce the song, she didn't introduce herself. She simply began to play. The melody that emerged was entirely her own, born from 3 years of subway platforms and sleepless nights and the crushing weight of misunderstanding. It was classical in structure but modern in emotion, complex enough to showcase her training but raw enough to bare her soul. Her voice joined the guitar, soft at first, then building to something that filled every corner of the intimate space. The song told the story of a girl who'd lost everything twice, once to lies and once to her own pride. It spoke of forgiveness and regret and the terrible courage it takes to start over. When the final note faded, the silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then someone started clapping, slowly, deliberately, and others joined until the entire room was on its feet. Maya opened her eyes to find tears on the faces in the crowd, but more than that, she saw recognition, not of her name or her history, but of something deeper, something true. She was about to leave the stage when a voice called out from the crowd. Maya. She turned and her heart stopped. There, standing at a back table, was her father. Victor Chen looked older, grayer, but his eyes held the same warmth she remembered from her childhood. Dad, the word escaped before she could stop it. He moved through the crowd slowly, carefully, as if afraid she might disappear again. When he reached the stage, he looked up at her with tears streaming down his face. I've missed you so much, sweetheart. Maya set down her guitar and jumped down from the stage. For a moment they just stood there, 3 years of pain and misunderstanding hanging between them. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I believed the worst of you. I should have known better. No, Victor said, pulling her into his arms. I'm sorry. I should have fought harder to find you. I should have made you understand that none of it mattered except having you safe. They held each other while the crowd watched respectfully, understanding they were witnessing something more precious than any performance. I saw the articles, Maya said when they finally pulled apart. I know what really happened. I know what you sacrificed. Victor cupped her face in his hands. You were never a sacrifice, Maya. You were always the most important thing. But my career, my reputation in classical music can be rebuilt, he said firmly. We can rebuild all of it together. Maya looked around the room at the faces watching them, at James Rodriguez, who was wiping away tears of his own, at Dr. Hoffman, who had somehow appeared in the crowd. Maybe I don't want to rebuild the old career, Maya said slowly. Maybe I want to build something new." Victor smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him in years. "Then we'll build something new. Whatever you want, sweetheart, whatever makes you happy." 3 months later, Maya's debut album topped both the classical and contemporary charts, a groundbreaking fusion that critics called genre-defining and emotionally devastating. The girl who'd once played subway platforms for spare change was now selling out concert halls across the country. But more than the professional success, Maya had found something she'd lost in those dark years underground. She'd found her family again, her faith in herself, and the courage to be vulnerable in a world that often demanded perfection. On the night of her Carnegie Hall debut, she stood in the wings with her father beside her, just like they used to do when she was a child preparing for recitals. "Nervous?" Victor asked. Maya smiled, thinking of all the subway platforms and hostile crowds and moments when she'd nearly given up entirely. "No," she said, "I've been preparing for this my whole life." She walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, but she could only see one face in the crowd. James Rodriguez sat in the front row, the man who'd believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. After the concert, as the crowd dispersed and the last of the flowers were collected, James approached her backstage. "That was incredible," he said. "You've come so far from that subway platform." "I haven't forgotten where I started," Maya said, "or who helped me find my way back." "About that," James said, suddenly looking nervous, "I have a confession to make." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Oh." "The night I first heard you play in the subway, I wasn't just randomly scouting talent. Dr. Hoffman had called me. She'd been searching for you for months, ever since she ran into you that day. She knew I had connections in both classical and contemporary music." Maya stared at him. "You mean?" "I mean you were set up," James said with a grin, "by people who loved you and wanted to see you succeed. Dr. Hoffman, your father, even some of your old classmates from Juilliard. We were all looking for you, Maya. We all believed you deserved a second chance." Maya felt tears welling up again, but this time they were tears of gratitude rather than grief. "So when you offered me that showcase—" "I was already half in love with your music," James said softly, "but I was completely in love with your courage, the way you'd rebuilt yourself from nothing, the way you'd survived everything that was thrown at you and still found a way to make beautiful music." Maya looked at this man who'd seen her at her lowest point and still believed in her potential. "James." "Yes." "When you say you were in love with my courage, is that all you were in love with?" He stepped closer, his hand reaching up to touch her face. "No, Maya, it wasn't." The kiss was soft, tentative, full of the promise of new beginnings and second chances. When they broke apart, Maya was smiling through her tears. "You know," she said, "3 years ago I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered." "And now?" Maya looked around the empty concert hall, thinking of her father waiting for her in the green room, of Dr. Hoffman who'd refused to give up on her, of all the people who'd believed in her even when she'd stopped believing in herself. "Now I know that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what actually matters." "And what matters?" James asked. "Love," Maya said simply. "Music, family, the courage to start over when everything falls apart." "And second chances." Maya smiled, taking his hand. "Especially second chances." 6 months later, Maya's Foundation for Young Musicians launched with a concert in the very subway station where James had first discovered her. She played the same songs that had once earned her subway change, but now they raised thousands of dollars for kids who needed instruments, lessons, and most importantly, someone to believe in their dreams. As the last notes of her performance echoed through Platform 7, Maya looked out at the crowd of donors, family, and friends who'd gathered to support her cause. Her father stood proudly in the front row, Dr. Hoffman beside him. James watched from the side of the makeshift stage, his eyes full of love and admiration. But what meant the most to Maya were the young faces scattered throughout the crowd. Kids from all over the city who'd come to hear the subway musician who'd become a star, who'd proven that talent and determination could overcome any obstacle. "Music saved my life," Maya said into the microphone as the applause died down. "Not once, but twice. First, it gave me a voice when I thought I had nothing to say. Then, it brought me home when I thought I was lost forever." She gestured to the subway platform around them. "This place taught me that music isn't about perfect venues or perfect audiences. It's about connection. It's about finding the people who need to hear what you have to say and making sure they can hear it." The crowd erupted in applause, but Maya wasn't finished. "So to every young musician out there who thinks they're not good enough, not connected enough, not lucky enough to make it in this industry, I want you to remember something. The most beautiful music comes from the most broken places. Your struggles, your failures, your moments of doubt, they're not obstacles to your dreams. They're the foundation of your art." As the crowd dispersed and the equipment was packed away, Maya stood alone on the platform for a moment, remembering the girl who'd sat here 3 years ago with nothing but a guitar and a heart full of anger. That girl couldn't have imagined this moment, couldn't have dreamed that her lowest point would become the foundation for something so much bigger than herself. James appeared beside her, slipping his arm around her waist. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Maya smiled, leaning into his embrace. Home, such a simple word, but it had taken her years to understand what it really meant. It wasn't a place or a building or even a career. It was the people who loved you, believed in you, and refused to give up on you even when you'd given up on yourself. "Yeah," she said, picking up her guitar case. "I'm ready." As they walked up the stairs toward the street, Maya heard the rumble of an approaching train. Tomorrow, other musicians would play on this platform, sharing their gifts with strangers who might need to hear something beautiful in the middle of an ordinary day. The cycle would continue just as it should, just as it always had. Music, Maya had learned, was bigger than any one person's story. But sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, your story could become part of something larger, something that mattered. Something that could change not just your own life, but the lives of everyone who heard it. Thank you for joining us on Maya's incredible journey from the subway platforms to the spotlight, from heartbreak to healing, from isolation to love. Her story reminds us that our greatest failures often become the foundation for our greatest successes, and that the courage to start over is sometimes the most beautiful music of all. If this story moved you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where we bring you tales of resilience, love, and the extraordinary power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle. Remember, your story isn't over yet. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters are still waiting to be written. Until next time, keep believing in the power of second chances, because you never know when your subway platform moment might change everything.